we're back. We didn't meet last month, did we? It's
No.
been a little bit of a hiatus, so I'm glad we're back. Tina with the Randall Library, and we're hosting Sustainable Stow. If you could please keep yourselves muted, just for background noise, but feel free to unmute to ask a question or put a question in the chat. We'll be following that along. Yeah, so I guess with that, I will hand it over to Rick.
Thank you, Tina.
Yeah.
I'm going to introduce our speaker in a minute, but we have a little pre-video first because we really want to sort of give a shout out to all of the various farms that we have around Stow and into Bolton and into Harvard. I mean, we're very lucky to be living where we are, to have this range of small farms with various different specialties. So we'll just do a short video and then I'll introduce our speaker, Linda. My first question is, have you visited all those farms? They all need our business for one reason or another. So it would be great if we went there and picked up on whatever their specialty is. But we're going to be talking to an orchardist. And that tonight, the orchardist from Old Frog Pond Farm, Linda Hoffman, and she's with us. Thank you very much, Linda. She opened her farm to us and to Jonathan of Stow TV so that we could go there, talk with her, and shoot pictures of her orchards. Hi, Linda.
Hello. Happy to be here.
Glad you're here. So we're going to be talking about organic farming, specifically organic orchard practices tonight. And if any of you have fruit trees in your yard, I know I do, you may have tried to grow organically. It's a challenge. So let's begin by, Linda, do you want to preface anything? I'll say one thing. So let me go back. When did you start? How long ago did you arrive at Old Frog Pond Farm?
I arrived in July of 2001 with 3 children. And I did, the orchard was there across the road. The prior owners gave me a half sheet of paper with the names of the apples by row, but neither could I identify the apples, nor were there any apples, because it was such a mess. The orchard had been left, and there were really only a few like old gnarled little discs hanging. It turned out there were, of the 300 trees, there were 100 dead trees. So it was in pretty bad shape, and that's kind of what I started with. But, you know, kind of when you're like going through all this life change and your life has like fallen apart, and you know, I had something in common with the orchard. So it was you know, it made sense. I'm going to bring the orchard back. I'm going to bring myself back. Maybe we'll start with that. You know, there was poison ivy curling around the trunks and brambles, and it had been left.
Wow.
Yeah, and of course, trees that are used to what I would say like chemical feedings, right? They're being taken care of. They don't have, their immune systems don't have to really develop because the orchardist is spraying a lot of chemicals. Then once that is shut off, the insects just have a heyday.
So you didn't really buy a working orchard,
Not
only
at all.
memory of an orchard or something, yeah?
Well, I didn't really buy an orchard. That was not my, I didn't know anything about apples. I'm not even from New England. Um, but it was there. And so I I just, yeah, I just had this idea. I'm going to bring this orchard back. And then when I heard what I'd need to do, like I started reading that I would need to spray all these chemicals and I would need to get a pesticide license. And I would have to go to classes to learn how to do this and get that pesticide license and then spray, these materials that, our orchard, as you saw, is surrounded by wetlands. So I didn't want to do that. Organic wasn't quite as popular 22 years ago as it is now. But I just decided that's what I'm going to do. And everyone I mentioned it to was like, oh, that's really difficult. They'd shake their head.
Well, 20 years on or 22 years on, it's a success. So let's go visit the farm or the orchard and see how it looks today. We've got some video and we'll spend some time and then we'll come back looking at and talking with you on the tape and then come back again for questions. So save up your questions or put them in the chat and we'll talk more with Linda after we've had a chance to view the orchard. I'm sitting here with Linda Hoffman in her orchard on the edge of Old Frog Pond, the pond and the farm. And welcome, glad you could join us.
Thank you.
Beautiful August morning. So it's the second, you're gonna see, I tell you it's the 2nd of August, so you get some sense when we look at some of the trees and so forth, you can see where her fruit is. And how it's developing. We'll all be in orchards in a month, I'm sure, picking apples. We hear that climate change is making it difficult to grow apples in Massachusetts. How has it been for you?
Climate change is making it difficult for farmers, period. Most people are aware of the frost in January that took out all the peaches in New England. I mean, that's really sad. So difficult. It's like, over in the other side of Harvard, Carlson's Orchards, peach crop is a big deal for them and a peach festival. And so that's tough all over. The frost that we got in May, we're not used to frosts in May. The trees they're not ready for frost in May. I mean, they're either in full blossom, full bloom, or small apples. The pollinated apples are already developing. So they're very vulnerable at that point. 3 orchards I know in Brattleboro, Vermont, lost their full crops. They say maybe 10% and the apples are deformed. So cider. So here, I think that most people in our area, in terms of their apple crop, they're looking pretty good. Maybe a 20%, 25%, some loss for sure. And I can show you when we go to the orchard what some of the the damage looks like. But for us, it was our pears that we really lost most of the Asian pear crop, but our apples are looking quite good. So, you know, we never know. You could have a
Right.
hailstorm
Right.
in 30 seconds and it can take out your crop, but they're looking good right now.
Okay. And the rain this summer was probably helpful.
So we haven't had to spend time watering for sure. You know, in this area, we have rocky soils. They're Hinkley soils, so they drain fast, which is in part why there's so many orchards around here. It's like not good land for crops, but it's good for orchards. It's a mix. You know, some people who have low fields, they couldn't plant, or if they were planted, they were taken out, or if they put their tomatoes out too early, which people do.
Right. Right. Right.
They were frosted. Most blueberry crops are fine around here, so I think we're lucky. Western Mass, you know, you've read.
Right.
Farms lost everything.
Flooded out.
So it is getting more and more difficult, and which is why a lot of farms now pick your own. You know, they're having other kinds of activities to bring people to their farm, to make money, because it's hard to. I mean, there's only so much you can charge for an apple, but there's a lot of expenses and
Right.
a lot of work goes into it.
Well, and as an organic grower, what makes it so difficult to grow organic, let's say apples?
There are certain materials that we can't use, so that aren't as effective as, say, a chemical fungicide, chemical insecticides that are, you know, you're talking about a billion-dollar industry. So these materials have been developed, you know, to really go and get certain pests. But I actually believe, and now, today, there's a lot more materials available to the organic grower. And so that's the good news. And there's even a lot more crossing over, that there are biofungicides and bioinsecticides that large commercial orchards that are not organic will be using, which is good news, right? And of course the homeowner can use those, and those are available. Apples in particular in New England are challenging to grow because we have a humid climate and we have a fungus that we short form known as scab that is very challenging to control. And it appears on the leaf when the spores are released from the ground, little black areas, and then it gradually grows, and then it jumps to the fruit, and you actually get scabs on your fruit. They look horrible. You know, you have to control that. So in a wet spring, you're spraying more and more often, because you just have to control it.
So in addition to biofungicides, which I assume a homeowner can buy, they just have to look for an organic label on it, because otherwise you're reading the fine print on the back and that might not be so great. You use a white powder on your trees, don't you? I've been by here when the trees are all white.
Yeah, we do. We use something called Surround, and it's a kaolin clay, and that made organic apple growing possible initially, and really still I think it's important, and that's for a particular pest that they don't have on the West Coast. You know, Washington State apples are grown in a desert. Like, you don't have pests. You're irrigating from the Columbia River. So that makes it more complicated. So we have this plum curculio beetle, and there still is no really effective biological insecticide. So we continue to use clay, and it's this white covering, and the fruit is, it's like this size, that fruit, 6 to 8 millimeters, and we cover it, we spray it, and then as the fruit grows, or if rain comes, we spray again, and we keep that on for 6 to 8 weeks while that beetle is venturing into the orchard, especially in the evening. It's like party time. Come into the orchard, make a little hole, a little half moon slot in the apple, lay the eggs, and go on to the next one.
It is striking when you drive by and the trees are all white.
Yeah, it's sort of ghostly.
Yeah.
But it does all completely wash off. Then we stop
right.
before the end of June, and it completely washes
Right.
off. So in that sense, that spraying all that surround is not spraying, some blast of something that takes care of the plum curculio.
And when you bought the orchard, which was about 20 years ago, right? A little over 20
Yeah.
years ago, you didn't have any experience as an orchardist, right? How did you learn?
No, a thing.
How did you
And
learn?
the orchard is on the other side of the street, so I was kind of like not really looking at it. But I did walk down, I did see it, even though it was completely covered in brambles and dead trees, and there's something about it that drew me. How did I learn? I was very fortunate, and early on met up with a group of iconoclast apple growers, sustainable organic apple growers, and this was organized by Michael Phillips, who's written several books, and his books are very helpful for the organic fruit grower. They remain so. He died a year ago and is sorely missed. And so they gave me ideas that it was possible, because anyone else I spoke with would say, oh, it's really hard to grow apples. It's really hard. Sort of like, forget it. You're a pipe dreamer,
But you did find some other compatriots growing organically.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. Oh, without that, it wouldn't be possible. I also ran into Dennis Wagner, who lives in Harvard, and he used to run Neshoba Winery's apple orchards long ago, and he's the one who taught me how to prune. Gave me that sense from his perspective of, he knew what pests I was going to have to deal with and what diseases I was going to have to deal with. He didn't know what materials we could use, but he knew, okay, you're going to have to deal with the plum curculio, with this codling moth, with like 200 apple pests.
That must have been depressing.
I don't know. I was just like, I'm gonna try this. I was going through a divorce and moving. I just moved. Someone told me when you're doing like major changes in your life, like you're not actually thinking clearly. So maybe I wasn't, but
it worked out.
It worked out. Yeah.
What is your advice to us all about eating more healthy food? It's not always easy to find, or affordable to find, organic produce.
Well, first of all, I don't think you have to you want to know, if you can, it's great to know your farmer. Like in Stow, you have a great farm. Small Farm is one of them that has a CSA, and this year they became certified organic. I don't believe they changed their practices at all, because they have been following, organic regulations. But yeah, support your farm, support local farmers. That's really the best.
I know some of the farms are also sustainable, but they can't describe themselves as organic. What's the difference?
The difference is that they might be doing, using a couple sprays that would not be allowed under organic regulations. And for them, it's important to have, that they need to do that, to have the crop that they can sell. I respect anyone who's growing food. It's hard, it's challenging, and I feel like people don't always, they know that our food comes from the soil, but like, do they really get it? That is what is sustaining us, this earth that we walk on. Look at this sculpture.
Yeah,
Can you see
I wanted
it?
to ask you about that. Can you get a picture of the sculpture? I'm going to get out of your way. So this is one of your sculptures, right?
This is, yes. And it was from it was inspired by a Walt Whitman quotation of this apple-shaped earth and we upon it. So it's that, like, it's amazing. We're on this planet. The topsoil is very thin. It's a thin film. And we're losing our topsoil, but that's what's sustaining us. So, yeah.
That's great. Should we look at some of the trees and the crop that's coming up?
Let's go walk into the orchard.
So people have an idea of what they can get now or in next month?
Yeah.
Great.
So I was telling you about some of the, about apple scab, for example.
Right.
And there are varieties. So when people ask me, like, what should I plant if I want to plant some apple trees, I suggest scab-resistant apples, apple varieties. And Pristine, that I was just telling you about, is one of them. And it's a delicious apple. It's a yellow-skinned apple, and it has a kind of lemony flavor. It's early, it's crisp. I can give you one to try even.
Oh, great.
And we're only August, 2nd? It's not quite ripe, but they're ripening. And so Pristine, Liberty, Freedom. Liberty and Freedom, of course. So they named those names. They chose them because they so-called liberate the apple grower from having to spend so much time dealing with scab.
That's interesting.
Yeah, no, so it's very helpful to plant varieties that have resistant to some of these fungal diseases that you just don't have to worry about them.
What other varieties do you grow that are distinctive?
Oh,
Maybe I shouldn't have asked that question.
there's about 80 varieties
80
that we
varieties.
have.
Wow.
Yeah, because we've top worked a number of the old Red Delicious trees, meaning basically remove their top and put little pieces, scionwood it's called, little twigs, first year growth, around that trunk, and they just grow up. You know, once the cambium layers meet, the scionwood and the cambium layer of the trunk, and they've got this incredible root system. So in 3 years, you can have apples.
Wow.
I can show you on a pear where I grafted some Asian pears, and I mean, it's crazy how fast they grow.
Yeah.
This, we have Golden Delicious. And that tree is one of the few Red Delicious trees in the orchard.
And you were saying you're going to have to go through this and thin it again.
Well, yeah, it's kind of outrageous. Like, it's horrendous looking in the sense there's so many apples. And we thinned by hand. We thinned down to like 3 apples a clump, which is still too many, but we also want to have a harvest. Like,
Right.
so it's really hard. But yeah, that's just like way too dense. It's embarrassing. And, you know, if once they all grow, they'll drop, then the apples will be small. I mean, it's a little late. We're just there. We don't have many people helping. We have 1 part-time employee and 1 full-time, and, you know, my husband, myself, and like he does all the mowing. Like, that alone is a huge job.
It is.
So, you know, we do our best, and we love what we do, and we love the trees, and so there'll be plenty of apples for people to pick.
Oh, good.
This is cedar apple rust, which can be a real problem, or it can be just kind of a little bit. Don't worry about it. Cedar trees are the vector.
That's what I was just going to say. Sounds like it comes from cedars.
Yeah, it does. So, you know, if there's a problem that it's not major, it's not taking over, then I kind of let things be. There's a particular caterpillar, for example, that comes in the like in mid-August, the red-humped caterpillar, and suddenly you'll see on a leaf like thousands of them. It's taking over, and then it eats that leaf and goes on to the next and the next, and as they're growing, they get bigger and bigger. So if I see it on one of our smaller, like a new tree, I do have to remove them because they'll denude the full sapling. But if it's on a big tree, it doesn't matter. We lose a few leaves, I let them be, and then the birds come and pluck them off. And so I think that's the biggest thing I've learned, is like to be patient and not to respond like so quick. Oh my God, what, you know, something like wait, like see what happens. Be patient. Patience is really good.
What about raccoons, other things that would also like your apples?
Well, here's some deer browse,
Yeah.
right? Right here.
Yeah.
So the deer definitely come through, probably every night.
Do they like your
I
apples?
don't have choice.
Do they like your apples?
You know, I don't even notice, actually, because when there's this many apples. So did someone eat, you know, here's an apple stem. There's a little gnaw. Did they grab that apple? Maybe. But do I miss it? Where it's a real problem is a young tree, because it won't have a chance to develop. And, you know, you can't have a young tree being like deer gnawed
Right.
year after year. So we physically cage each young apple tree that gets planted in the orchard for quite a few years until they really are on their own and growing.
So you grow a number of other things here, and one of which is your fall-bearing raspberries. These bushes are huge. What's going on?
I don't know. What's going on is water. Like they love the water. I mean, this is, I think there's only been 1 year where I've had them like explode like this. Later on today, we're going to be staking and tying them back up to hold themselves. Also, this is a very unconventional way to grow raspberries. Most people have sort of posts and wires, and plant, 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 and then they kind of get, or 2 rows of wires and they're in between.
Right.
Not, so what happens here is they're actually helping each other to stand. I try, but we don't always get to it, to remove like some of the smaller canes that are coming up out of one plant, so all the energy goes to a few and they're stronger. We didn't get to that here.
I'm just thinking of how many plants do you have? How long that would take? That's a lot of labor.
Everything takes a lot of labor. Everything does. But, you know, it's beautiful. You can hear the buzz of the pollinators when you walk down the rows, and the bees and all of the pollinators just love it.
You don't have any trouble. You don't have to worry about growing flowers for pollinators. You've got pollinating potential. Pollinating potential all around you, right?
We do. We do. But we do have. See the end of the plant over there? We have mountain mint, and I have it at the ends of all these rows. Huge clumps of mountain mint. It has that menthol smell, that scent, and the pollinators love it. And it's a fall flowering mint. So when you look on the top of it, there'll be just all kinds of pollinators, just covering it like a mat, a convention of pollinators. And we do keep a couple hives here of bees, but I like, though all those apples you saw were pollinated, right?
Yep.
And we lost our bees last winter. Mm-hmm. We had 2 very small hives, new hives. So they were not the main pollinators of our orchard. It's all
the native
pollinators that are so important.
Then we're trying to create a pollinator pathway in Stow.
That's great. That's so wonderful. Yeah.
We got to do that.
Yeah. I mean, there are places in the world where people are hand pollinating apple trees.
That's crazy.
Trees.
I can't imagine it.
Yes, it is. Yeah, Albert Einstein said 4 years after that like will disappear several years after the bees do. Like he said that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's something else that we just don't get. We don't remember. Like I remember driving with my parents in the car, and every time we stopped at a gas station, like you had to clean the windshield.
Yes.
Because it was covered with bugs.
Yes.
That doesn't happen anymore.
No.
Like, isn't that odd? That's a big change. So everything is so incremental, it doesn't really register on us, does it? Yeah.
Right. Well, maybe we should end with another look at some of your sculpture.
Okay.
Let's go look at some of the art in the orchard.
Okay.
I'm sure that helps you grow better fruit.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Linda, for giving us that tour. It was a beautiful day. We've actually had a beautiful month, so I hope the apples have continued to ripen well, in spite of some of the rain. Do they ever get too big? Do they ever swell up with the rain?
Ours will not because there's so many. But yes, when there's more rain, when there's more water, the apples will be larger.
Wow.
Grapes will be larger. Raspberries.
Oh, and we'll come back to gardening here in a minute, but I just wanted to mention, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the farm is open right now for anybody who wants to go see some of that artwork. Open on Sunday afternoons, right?
The sculpture exhibit is open on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays.
Okay.
From 11 to 4, and we'll have apple picking beginning that weekend after Labor Day. So I think it's the 9th, Saturday the 9th. Apple picking is on Saturday and Sundays.
Great. So first of all, I'd encourage anybody who has questions to put them in the chat or raise their hand. I have a couple questions here just to get us going. You mentioned pollinators, and I told you in the interview that we're working on a pollinator pathway. What do you think is, you work with pollinators all the time. What do you think is most important for us now, for us all to do to support them? I listened, I hadn't thought about fall flowering mint as being important before. Are there other things like that?
I think that in the fall, it's really good. It's really good to plant flowers that are for the pollinators in the fall, because they really need, there's less in bloom for sure. And they need to kind of bulk up, right? They need to have stores available to get them through the winter.
It's at least reassuring that when you lost your hives last winter, you were able to get all of the pollination done that you needed.
It's incredible. Yeah.
Relying
How
on
many
pollinators. That's great.
Yeah, native pollinators. It's really important. In fact, you don't want to actually have too many hives. I mean, they say that there's places, West Coast, if you're pollinating some kinds of fruit trees where you just have acre after acre after acre, there will be no native pollinators then. There's nothing to support them. And the bees will also, if there's too many bees in one area, then the native pollinators don't have that same access to the plants. The bees kind of take over.
And if you hadn't
So it's always about a balance, right?
Well, and if you hadn't been growing organically for 20 years, the native pollinators might not have been there anyways, right?
That's probably true. Yeah. I mean, we're not putting any herbicide down under the trees.
Right.
In fact, I encourage all the native wildflowers because I love them. I even plant them between the trees.
With organic growing, I understand you have to anticipate the problem, not react to it. So I assume traditional growers would see a pest on their plants, their orchard, whatever, and they'd react to it with a spray. But you have to anticipate and get ahead of the pest, right? Is that right?
I don't know. I think it's a little more complicated. I mean, most growers now are IPM, integrated pest management. And so the theory behind that is to put out traps for different pests so they can get a sense of when they arrive and what the thresholds are, what the numbers are, so that they know. So that's a big help instead of just spraying because you know that probably now they're there, those insects, but they see, oh, okay, we're over the threshold for codling moth in, per acre. And so then they'd come out with a spray. Organic growers have more loss, I think, of their crop due to insects, because we are not, and it also depends on the farmer. I do spray one bioinsecticide, one spray a year, a season, and that's all. We're just not, and I managed to get away with it. Yeah. And then, there are also pests. There are insects that are, eating. There can be imbalance and there can be some kind of balance. The aphids, the ladybugs eat the aphids. And so you don't want to harm the ladybugs, right? Because you'd rather have multitudes of them. So they eat the aphids on the undersides of the leaves.
Elizabeth asked, we have just a few trees. Is there something like organic apple growing for dummies that can take care of them without taking over our lives?
Yeah, everybody wants a little recipe, but I don't know that I've never seen a book like that, but it is getting easier, and I think you can. I guess maybe at some point I just have to like offer a class, because there are certain insects that you're going to have to deal with, and certain fungal diseases that oops, not very good with ear pods. And I think I said in the video, there's more materials, like neem is a great spray, and there's neem that is pure neem oil, which is hard to use, but you can get neem that's already in suspension. It's a formula, and neem is really good. It's not only healthy for the trees because it's giving them some kinds of I don't even know the word now, but what will be beneficial, but it will also, like, neem will, any like mites, neem will take care of them. And there are some pests that neem will take care of. So neem is a really good, Michael Phillips, who is like the godfather of sustainable or holistic apple growing, he has a good book. And so that book, we could put that in the chat, Michael Phillips.
Right.
He's probably the one to go to. I mean, that he's written a few books, and that's what I would say. And also when people are planting, I always recommend they get like disease resistant trees, which you can find.
Right.
Then it's really helpful.
Any other questions on organic apple growing or berry growing? Not yet. I would say I've been working with Michael Phillips writing for a while, and it's very helpful. It includes pruning, which to me, we're talking about getting rid of bugs, but I think pruning is as big a challenge as pest control. Trying to figure out how to prune a peach or an apple or a pear is tough. And you stand there and your tree is growing and it's really healthy, and now you're going to lop off about a quarter of it or more. And it's hard.
Elizabeth, do you know what varieties you have, or how big the trees are, or what kind of rootstocks they're on?
I don't. I know the varieties, but I don't know the rootstock. And we
like,
just
are they
started.
big? Are they dwarf or semi-dwarf?
They're dwarf, and they. Oh, I thought that's what you mean by rootstock. They're semi-dwarf. We've got Honeycrisp and Fuji, and just a few. And
we just picked them because we like the apples.
Yeah, we were not thinking about how vulnerable they might be to pests.
Right. But how old are they?
Well, we got them last year, but they are. I'm looking at one right now. It's probably about 8 feet, 9 feet.
So they were already growing in like a root ball. They had a root ball. They weren't bare root. They were. So you should be able to get fruit.
We have 6 apples.
Woo! That's great.
So
That's
far, so
great.
good. We don't know exactly when to pick them,
Yeah.
but so far, so
Well,
good.
the Honeycrisp is almost ripe. I mean, one thing you can do is just shake the tree, and kind of
Mm.
gentle shake. And when they're ready, they're ripe, they fall. So that definitely tells you. But we're going to start picking our Honeycrisp in probably a week. And what's a beautiful way to know, I mean, you can know from taste, like that sweetness will be there. And when it's unripe, that you'll get like a little bit of a chalkiness taste, like in that Honeycrisp. But when you cut the apple in half, I wish I could show you. You slice it like in half this way. There's a star right in the center, a 5-pointed star inside every apple, and inside each point are the little seeds. And when the seeds are white, it's not a mature apple. It's not a ripe apple. When the seeds are turning, it's becoming ripe. And when turning brown, and when the seeds are dark brown, it's fully ripe. And so you can tell by that. But I eat apples before they're ripe. Doesn't matter to me. I just begin tasting them.
One thing we found with one of these random things on the internet, and it seems to work, is because we didn't want to mess with this fence to keep the deer away, and we just hung the Irish Spring soap, like crumbled up Irish Spring soap in little bags, and so far so good. We know they've been in the yard and they haven't yet discovered the apples. Don't tell them, please.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I have done soap, but they learned. And so there's another question.
Yeah, what about water sprouts?
In pruning, you mean?
Yes.
Who is? So a lot of the water sprouts, or if you have a ton of them, when you're pruning, you're getting rid of them all. But there may be some, so you have to kind of watch that will be, they're strong, they're healthy branches or healthy shoots. And one of them you might just take it and bend it kind of under another branch just to get it to go down instead of straight up. You want it to be a little more horizontal and let it grow and let it become a branch. So it's not like all water shoots are bad, for sure. Pruning is, I think, the most pleasurable job in the orchard. Honestly, I love pruning. It's like sculpting, You're there like looking at that tree and and if it's your tree, you see year to year how it grows and how it responds to your pruning. But the most important thing to remember is you want that central leader to be growing straight. And you don't want, to end up with like 2 shoots going this way, because then the tree is kind of like, which way do I go? Which direction? And there's no path that it's following.
But there's a difference between, I think, apples and pears, because some pears, they tell you that they want an open center, and other pears, they want a strong leader.
Yeah, I prune my pears to a central leader, all of them. Mostly they're Asian pears. Peaches are more commonly vase-shaped, and with that open center, peaches, nectarines, apricots. So yeah, the fruits, I think pears and apples pears are more, they're more vigorous and their branches are stronger. So you're pruning a little differently, but the peaches are a little different. You prune them much later. The apples we prune in the winter when things are dormant. when the trees are dormant. Peaches, you don't want to prune till later after all frost danger is gone.
Which is difficult to determine in climate change.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, any other questions for Linda? This has been great. And I'm looking forward to more visits over to Old Frog Pond this fall.
I look forward to welcoming you, all of you. Yeah. I hope you really enjoy your apples. Let me just tell you that in Japan is where they will bag apples. And that's how they keep the pests away. So they're actually growing inside their own little bag. It's like their own little greenhouse. And then at the end of the season, they remove that, but they keep, some another kind of coloring. Oh, they want them to be able to color. That's what's really important. And they want them to color like all around. So they'll even put like some kind of reflective material under, and they'll etch their apples. So this is something you could do. Like you will see on your apple, which is amazing. If there's a leaf that has like just laid itself on the apple, it will block the sunlight and you'll see that shape when you move it. Or if there's a branch, you can see that line. So you could take some masking tape, you could take anything, you could write, you could do a stencil, and people have done that, and it's pretty cool. Yeah. And then in Japan, they sell them for hundreds of dollars.
An apple?
An apple, yeah. Yeah. Carol.
I just want to add to that. I grew up in Brazil, and there's a large Japanese farming population in sort of the southeast of Brazil. And we would drive by, and you could literally see all these apple trees with all these little gauze kind of things. They were sometimes you could see the guys up on ladders individually putting them on and tying them. And one particular farm, they had like little colored ties. So, and I don't know if that was to identify the apples or what, but they looked like they were all like nicely wrapped like little Christmas presents or something.
Wow, that's
But
great.
it was
You
really
actually
cool to
saw
see. We had never seen that before, until we moved to Brazil. But they do this. So I guess they brought that technology or that way of doing it, from Japan to Brazil.
Yeah, neat. That's nice.
A lot of patience.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of handwork. It's all done by hand.
Yeah.
Well, as Linda was saying, it is Japan that is now pollinating, I believe, self-pollinating.
In China is where I read.
Oh.
But yeah, I don't know. It could be Japan too. But yeah, an area in China. It's incredible. Yeah.
Oh, if they lost pollinators, is that why they're hand pollinating?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's encouraging to hear that you lost your hives and the native pollinators were there to pollinate your trees.
Yeah. Yeah. It's everything. It's ants, it's flies, it's all kinds of insects. It's not just like the bee family and the bumblebees. And it's kind of amazing. In fact, the smallest little insects are probably even better in that, apples they have to kind of dive down in there to get the nectar. But so for bumblebees, it's kind of hard. They don't fit down. They're not the best pollinators for apples. Even the bees have to kind of like trying to get down in there. But all the little ones that just go here and there and flit around. Yeah. But mountain mint, you need any mountain mint or you want to see mountain mint, come find me, because we have so much of it. And the insects in the fall absolutely love it. You will see every kind of pollinator that you could imagine. big and little, and they're just all there on the flowers of this mountain. And
Wow.
very beautiful. So thanks for asking me to share this, what I love, and yeah, come to the farm.
Well, thank you, Linda. Thank you for your time. It was beautiful to visit the farm, see some of your artwork, meet Maggie May.
Yeah, that's that puppy who was walking around.
Right, right. So thank you, and thank you, Tina. Anything, last words from you, Tina?
Oh, we can't hear you. Oh, I should
First,
say
I have to put
my
myself
book.
on mute.
You have you
I
ordered copies of
do.
my book.
Yes, I do. I had put out.
I should show it. Can you
There
see?
you go. And it's at the
Okay.
library.
It is.
It's at the library, the Artist
at
in the Orchard.
circulation desk, so come by and get it. Yes, thank you.
And I read it, and it's a great book. I really enjoyed it. It's about more than just growing apples, but it does talk about her journey developing the orchard. And yeah, Susan enjoys it too. You've got some happy readers here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Good night,
Good
all.
night, everyone.
Night.